Hey everybody, Lessons with Lenski Part Deuce, here to address the rest of Key Issue 2, get on to 3 and 4, and be done with the folk and pop culture chapter. So here is where we have two good examples of folk housing. I'm going to bounce between the two just to point out a couple attributes that are important. Okay, so we see snow on the right, which is on the roof. Obviously, we don't see snow on the left because, well, they're in a desert. So the reason why we have these angled roofs is for the snow. If we had a flat roof like this, you could have, 5 feet of snow packed on top of your house. That ceiling caves in, your neck's broken, you're dead. Okay? So what we have is these angled roofs. We have heavier, sturdier, more durable building materials in colder climates. On the other hand, we have lighter sticks or hay or some sort of flimsy woody material to make up these houses. It looks like there's a lot of open areas for a slight breeze to get through to try to stay a little cooler. So just know that there's big differences in these houses, but the reason why there's differences is because of the environmental influences, also the access to resources. Moving on to the heart of U.S. folk housing, when you see the spread of particular housing ideas or styles from New England, this is where you're going to see them spread. So we would see more New England-based folk housing in Wisconsin. Mid-Atlantic, Lower Chesapeake, and Tidewater folk housing styles would be more along this East Coast. All right, so just know, the general area of where these styles will flow. Okay, nothing big to really remember content-wise, but just knowing, a general direction. So Mid-Atlantic is just straight west and then down into Tennessee and Alabama. Okay, I'm just going to move on here. Don't really concentrate on that too much. The distribution of folk and popular housing. So U.S. popular housing. I want to touch on a couple of things here. So most people no longer build their houses, but instead they're just kind of mass produced by construction companies. If I were to move to Wales, I would have no idea how to make a house. Build the house, put in the driveway, anything. I would definitely hire somebody to do that. And that's kind of where we've grown as a society. And that's just the culture of housing. And a big thing is people are also just buying other people's houses, which is a big thing. This last one is just the influence of shapes, materials, detailing, and other things. There's different architectural styles in pop culture. There's definitely neighborhoods. I know, apartments do all look the same, but houses, they can look different, but there's some neighborhoods that are all like cookie cutter, typical white picket fence, 2-story houses. They all look the same. Not a big fan of them, but there's definitely some great neighborhoods, especially in Wales, with some awesome houses. Here are some of those different styles. We're not going to concentrate on them. If you're taking the AP test, we might go over them. I don't see them popping up this, split level house and asking you technically how many levels does this house have. It would be 3 in a basement. You wouldn't need to know that, but we'll cover it if we have to, if I see anything remotely close to a question on housing. Moving on to Key Issue 3. Why is access to folk and pop culture unequal? So we're going to talk about electronic diffusion of pop culture. All right, you guys spread pop culture so much every single day, and you don't even know it. So the principal obstacle to accessing pop culture is lack of access to electronic media sources. First one, the most important piece of technology is the TV. For 2 reasons. It's one of the US's and world's biggest popular culture Leisure activities. After I'm done with this, I'm probably going to throw something on TV while I grade some things. I'm multitasking, but still gaining some TV time. I have 3 TVs in our apartment. I'm staring at one. There's one in my room, and there's one in my brother's room. That's probably way too many TVs for one tiny apartment, but we're wild, okay? We just got to do it. Second one, TV is the most important mechanism for rapidly spreading pop culture because everybody has one. I have 3 TVs in my room. If that tells you anything, there's probably people with more than that amount of TVs in their house. So you can imagine just around the world how many TVs there are. This is a little pie chart on how much we spend in front of the good old TV, typically on the weekends. It depends. This is most likely on average, so this could be up or down, or depending on if you don't even have a TV, you might not even watch too much. Electronic diffusion of pop culture in the mid 20th century is primarily done by the TV. You should know this. You should think of mid 20th century television. That's when it booms. That's when everybody wants one. And then the next one is going to be the diffusion of the internet, which is the late 20th century. This is, going to follow the same pattern as the TV, but it's going to spread much more rapidly. People hear about the internet, they think it is the coolest, most revolutionary thing ever created because you can connect with things all across the globe and you're controlling it. So that's just a very interesting thing for people to do. It spreads like wildfire, and now you guys can do it in a split second right on your phone. Moving on to challenges in accessing electronic media. There's a couple of places where, there isn't a open dialogue or wide access or open access to these items. The first one that I'm going to talk about is just the external threat. The TV industry is really dominated by 3 people: the Japanese, the British, and us. All right. Leaders of the developing countries could view dominance as impressing American values upon viewers. So, the idea that when people are watching these things on TV, they are somehow getting American values drilled into their head or brainwashed. So, upward social mobility, the idea that everybody has the opportunity, freedom for women, might not be a popular idea in some cultures, and glorification of youth. This idea that, you can be young forever and you can be whimsical and make a lot of mistakes, and that's just not true in some cultures. Being a kid means working hard, being diligent, and not playing around, and taking life seriously, treating your elders with respect. That's not a focal point of U.S. culture, at least in some places. Okay, moving on to the news. The news media in developing countries is dominated by the government, whereas the United States is largely privately owned. Many African and Asian government officials criticize this freedom of the press. You can't see it down here. The idea that the media does not convey, a good message sometimes, that it can spread falsehoods and things like that. Internal threats in dealing with electronic media. I'm just going to talk about this down here. Some governments attempt to limit internet content, political content, so anything opposing government, you're not going to see it. Social content, so socially sensitive, such as gambling or sex, is going to be, a taboo thing. Not taboo in a sense, but just they're not going to want it out there because that could degrade the quality of their citizens. And then conflict and security. All right. With armed conflict, border disputes, or militant groups just being able to, pass on their information to groups in order to maybe, perform an overthrow of the government or do some sort of rallying against the government. Okay, so it does say key issue number 3. It's supposed to say key issue 4. Sorry, but this is why do folk and pop culture face sustainability challenges, okay? So sustainability challenges for folk culture. So there's this increased connection with pop culture that makes maintaining old practices really hard. If it's knocking on the door, you're probably going to let a little bit in at a time. It might be clothing. It might be getting a cell phone to connect with somebody in another state. It's just small steps that will eventually lead to bigger steps. The next thing is the impacts of globalization on the landscapes create challenges in maintaining something unique. Everything kind of has become the same, where, you get off the highway over off of 18 there, or 83, whatever one it is. There's strip malls and restaurants. It's just kind of all becoming the same, and things spread so rapidly where you might not be able to keep something unique or traditional. Last one is global diffusion of pop culture challenges the subservience of women to men that is embedded in some folk customs. This is a good thing for the ladies in the class, so awesome. The idea that folk cultures will show this dominance of men over women, and in pop culture we try to break down those barriers. I think we kind of saw some really good examples with Hillary Clinton. If she could have held the presidency spot, it could have turned the tide in some women's heads. The idea that we had the possibility. She did not win. However, we do have some great role models for girls out there, and that just wouldn't stay true in traditional folk culture. So sustainability challenges for pop culture. Two reasons here, and that is the pollution of the landscape and depletion of scarce natural resources. Pollution of the landscape is the idea that everything becomes the same. Whether that's just seeing fast food signs all over the place, motel signs, it just becomes so corporate in areas that nothing is unique. You don't get that small town feel anymore. Corporate America is in every single neighborhood, is essentially what this is saying. This next one is an example. Golf courses remaking the environment. This would be very apparent in warmer climates such as California or Arizona, where you have a drought, where people are supposed to limit their water use, but you have the greenest fairways and greens on this earth at golf courses in Arizona, California, and that's going to impact the areas around them. Number 2 is the depletion of the resources, okay? And then that's going to be animal products with, either coats or clothing or, furniture or car seats, something like that. Or you're talking about fossil fuels. I wouldn't say that's a scarce natural resource. I think we could get there, but we love our gas cars. We're not big on electric cars quite yet. It's becoming a trend, but gas is still our favorite way of getting energy in our cars. So this is recycling in the United States. In 95, you see a huge spike in recycling. Alright guys, I had to cut that previous slide short because I ran out of time. So this is the last one, sequent occupants model. You can read the definition, but essentially what this is saying is we have folk culture right here. Some traditional buildings, pyramids of Giza, some sort of, traditional Athens, building here. Not sure what it is, but you see these new buildings being built around. The idea that everything has spread out from here and has become new. You see pyramids of Giza, you see this Y-shaped building and a pool right here that has slowly started to trickle from the center point of tradition here. All right, I will stop talking and thank you so much.